I've come to realize that the things that define us aren't the moments when everything goes smoothly, but the ones that shatter us and leave us scrambling to pick up the pieces. My life before the accident was unremarkable. I was your average person, drifting through a series of routine events, following the expected path, comfortable in the banality of it all. But the accident changed everything. It ripped away the comfortable mask of normality, forcing me into a battle with myself, with my body, and with the suffocating pressure to pretend that I was still the same person. It all started on a day like any other. It's funny how, when you look back, the most devastating moments always seem to come on the days when nothing significant is supposed to happen. The weather was mild, the sky slightly overcast but unthreatening, and I was driving along a familiar road, thinking about nothing in particular. I don't even remember the last thought I had before the accident. Maybe it was about what I'd have for dinner, or a song on the radio, something so inconsequential it evaporated the moment everything went wrong. I never saw the truck coming. 1 second, I was cruising down the highway, and the next, there was a deafening crash. Metal crumpling, glass shattering, and my world spinning out of control. I remember the sensation of weightlessness, the disorienting flip of the car as it careened off the road. I don't remember the impact. Not fully. It was all flashes of light and sound, a jarring symphony of chaos that my mind couldn't fully process. When I regained consciousness, I was upside down, suspended by my seatbelt. The world outside my shattered windshield was blurry, smeared with rain and blood. The pain came later, slowly at first, like the sensation of pins and needles when your foot falls asleep. But then it grew, swelling into a tide of agony that washed over every part of me. I knew I was hurt badly. My leg was twisted in a way that legs shouldn't be. Blood dripped from my forehead, pooling on the roof of the car beneath me. The smell of gasoline was thick in the air, sharp and acrid, making my stomach churn. But all I could think in that moment was, I'm alive. It was hours before anyone found me. Time blurred during those hours, but the pain was a constant companion, keeping me tethered to the reality of the situation. By the time the paramedics arrived, I was drifting in and out of consciousness, my body a wreckage of shattered bones and torn skin. I remember the flashing lights of the ambulance, the sterile smell of antiseptic, and the cold press of metal instruments as they worked to stabilize me. But mostly, I remember the helplessness, the overwhelming realization that my body was no longer my own, that I had lost control in every possible way. The hospital became my home for months. At first, it was a whirlwind of surgeries, medications, and physical therapy. I was patched up, piece by piece, like a broken vase glued back together. But the cracks were still there, visible and fragile. The doctors told me I was lucky to be alive. But it didn't feel like luck. It felt like a curse, a burden I wasn't sure I could carry. Every day was a new battle against the pain, against my body's limitations, and against the gnawing sense that I would never be the person I had been before. Physical therapy was a special kind of hell. My body, once taken for granted, now felt like an alien thing, foreign and uncooperative. Simple tasks became monumental challenges. Learning to walk again was the most frustrating process of all. My legs, still stiff and swollen from the injuries, refused to obey my commands. I would stand, wobbling like a newborn calf, only to collapse moments later, my body betraying me over and over. Each failure felt like a confirmation of my worst fear, that I would never be whole again. And yet, the physical pain wasn't the worst part. It was the emotional toll, the invisible scars that no amount of therapy or surgery could fix. Trauma isn't just something that happens to your body. It embeds itself deep in your mind, wrapping around your thoughts like a vice, squeezing tighter every time you try to forget. I started having nightmares, vivid and terrifying, where I was trapped in the car again, unable to escape as the metal crushed around me. I would wake up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. And for a moment, I would forget that it was just a dream. But the worst part wasn't the nightmares. It was the pressure. The relentless, suffocating pressure to be normal again. People have an expectation when you survive something like I did. They expect you to bounce back, to be grateful for the second chance you've been given, to get up and move on with your life as if nothing had changed. They don't understand that everything has changed. I wasn't the same person I had been before the accident. My body wasn't the same. My mind wasn't the same. And my life wasn't the same. But no one wanted to hear that. They wanted the story of resilience, of triumph over adversity. The feel-good tale where I fought through the pain and came out stronger on the other side. At first, I tried to give them that. I put on the brave face. Smiled when they asked how I was doing. Told them I was getting better. That I was on the mend. But inside, I was unraveling. Every time someone told me how strong I was, how brave, it felt like a lie. I didn't feel strong. I felt broken. I felt like a shell of who I used to be. Walking around in a body that no longer felt like mine. Struggling to meet expectations that I wasn't sure I could ever fulfill. The pressure came from all sides: friends, family, doctors, even strangers. They all wanted to see the success story. The miraculous recovery. I could see it in their eyes. That flicker of disappointment whenever I admitted that things weren't going well. That I was still struggling. The world doesn't have patience for slow recoveries. For setbacks. People get tired of hearing about your pain. They want you to be better. And they want it to happen fast. But healing isn't fast. It's messy. It's unpredictable. And it doesn't follow a neat, linear path. Some days, I would make progress, only to be knocked back the next day by a flare of pain or a wave of exhaustion. I wanted to scream at the people who told me to stay positive, to keep fighting, because they had no idea how hard it was just to get out of bed some mornings. How exhausting it was to pretend that I wasn't falling apart. The real battle wasn't with my body, though. It was with the image of who I was supposed to be. I had always prided myself on being independent, strong, capable. But after the accident, I had to rely on others for everything: getting dressed, making food, even going to the bathroom. It was humiliating. I felt like a child, stripped of my autonomy, my dignity. And the worst part was that no one seemed to understand how much that hurt. They saw it as part of the recovery process. Just another hurdle to overcome. But to me, it was a constant reminder that I was no longer the person I used to be. The psychological toll deepened when I was cleared to go home. I thought that leaving the hospital would be a relief. That being in familiar surroundings would make everything easier. But home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place full of ghosts: the ghost of who I had been before the accident. The ghost of the life I had once led. Every room was a reminder of the person I no longer was. I couldn't walk up the stairs without help. Couldn't cook a meal without getting exhausted. Couldn't even sit on my couch without being reminded of the hours I had spent there before. Carefree and comfortable. Unaware of the nightmare that awaited me. I tried to get back to some semblance of normalcy. But everything felt wrong. Friends invited me out, trying to get me back into the routine of life. But I couldn't enjoy it. The noise. The crowds. The constant reminder that I wasn't like them anymore. It all felt too overwhelming. I started avoiding social events. Making excuses to stay home. Retreating further and further into myself. I could see the confusion in their eyes when I turned down invitations. The way they didn't understand why I wasn't bouncing back like they thought I should. But how could I explain it to them? How could I make them understand that I didn't feel like I belonged in that world anymore? That the accident had created a chasm between me and the life I used to live. And I didn't know how to bridge it. I wanted to be normal again. But I didn't know what normal was anymore. It felt like everyone around me was moving forward, living their lives, while I was stuck, frozen in the moment of the accident, unable to move on. It didn't help that my body still wasn't fully healed. I had chronic pain, lingering injuries that never quite went away. Every step I took was a reminder of the accident. A reminder that I was different now. There were days when the pain was so bad that I couldn't get out of bed. When the thought of walking to the bathroom felt like climbing a mountain. And on those days, the pressure to be normal felt even more suffocating. How could I be normal when my body was a constant reminder of everything I had lost? The hardest part was accepting that I might never fully recover. I might never be the person I had been before. Might never have the life I had once taken for granted. The doctors told me that some of my injuries were permanent. That I would have to learn to live with the pain. With the limitations. And that was the hardest thing to hear, that this wasn't just a temporary setback, but a new reality that I would have to accept. It took me a long time to come to terms with that. There were days when I hated my body. When I hated myself for surviving. For not being strong enough to heal faster. To be the person everyone wanted me to be. But slowly, painfully, I began to let go of those expectations. I began to realize that I didn't have to be normal, that I didn't have to pretend to be okay if I wasn't. I began to accept that my life would be different now. That I would be different. And that was okay. Recovery isn't a destination, it's a journey. And some journeys are longer, harder, and lonelier than others. I still have bad days. Days when the pain flares up. When the memories of the accident haunt me. when I feel like I'm drowning under the weight of it all. But I also have good days now. Days when I can laugh. When I can enjoy the simple things. When I can look in the mirror and see not just the scars, but the strength it took to survive. I may never be the person I was before the accident. But I'm learning to make peace with that. I'm learning that strength doesn't mean pretending to be okay. That resilience isn't about meeting other people's expectations. And that healing is a process that doesn't have a set timeline. I survived the accident. I survived the trauma. And now I'm surviving the pressure to be normal again. And maybe that's enough.